to the relay where we're covering today's top boxing news.
Well, it does appear that Errol Spence is continuing his transformation from Boogeyman to Booze Hound. And I can only tell you what I told you before, that I myself don't give a shit about Errol Spence's alcohol problem. In many ways, his own fans don't even give a fuck about his alcohol problem because all they're doing is enabling it, making excuses for it. Even after this man manages to flip a Ferrari, total it, but walk away unscathed, at least based on the reports. Nobody really cares about what Errol Spence is doing outside of the ring. The only reason that it's constantly being discussed is because of what impact it could have on his career moving forward. That if this has somehow become a talking point, it's because of how this could affect the boxing. And it is the boxing that allowed everyone to know who this guy was in the first fucking place. That you can't make it as a boxer and a full-time alcoholic. Those two things, they just don't mix. At least not in the realm of longevity, an extended career that spans many years. This kind of self-destructive behavior is not conducive towards sustained success. Oh, I know that Errol Spence's fans and the PBC shills, their rabble of spin doctors here on YouTube, they'll try to explain away this continued behavior from Errol Spence, which is absolutely ridiculous, because the last place that a guy like him needs to be, having survived what he survived, is in the company of a bunch of fucking drunks, a bunch of fucking booze hounds, a bunch of alcoholics. He don't need to be around that kind of stuff, given him coming off of what he's coming from. But that's where he is, and he seems to be having a grand old time. And rather than addressing how self-destructive this is, how it does appear like he didn't learn his lesson, his fans continually choose to try to explain away, downplay this behavior as if it's everybody else that's crazy, it's everybody else that's making too much of this.
Errol Spence Jr. having a good time. Why do you give a fuck? One thing you noticed about in the video with Errol Spence Jr. having a good time, whether it's people drinking around him, yes. Was he drinking? No. And if he was drinking, so fucking what? He could do what he wants to do.
The man flipped a Ferrari. What more indication does he need that he needs to slow down, that he needs to reassess his priorities and act his age? Because he's no teenager and he's no tween, okay? This is a guy who's in his early 30s or approaching them. This is a guy with a family at home, small children. And you know, you figure that when you come off of what he's coming off of, if you can survive something like that, that you will derive a lesson from it. But Errol doesn't appear to have learned his lesson. Not unless you think he was in the company of all these alcoholics, but he was sitting around drinking Capri Suns and warm glasses of milk.
Yeah, that's what he was doing.
And this brings me back to all the familiar talking points in regards to, not just Errol Spence and what he's doing, but the PBC stable as a whole. A stable that believes that they're following the path of a Floyd Mayweather, for example. They want to replicate his success, the kind of success that he had in his career. And they think that's what they're doing. But we all know that Floyd Mayweather wasn't no fucking full-time alcoholic. This guy wasn't punching in the clock at Booze Hound Central. Far from it. Because if he had, he would have never got to make the kind of money that he made. He would have never been the athlete that he went on to be. He wouldn't have had the kind of track record that he amassed, the kind of longevity that he exhibited, had he been slamming down drinks the way that Errol's slamming down drinks. That if Floyd had the same bad habits that a lot of these guys have got, he would have never got to be the Floyd Mayweather that they know and love. They want to replicate his success, but they don't seem to want to put in the same kind of work that he put in.
So it ain't gonna happen.
A lot of people credit Al Heyman for Floyd Mayweather getting to where he got to, and I've long thought that they are overstating Al Heyman's role in Floyd Mayweather's success. That, Al Heyman might have had something to do with it, I don't doubt that, But if Floyd got to where he got to, it's because he, as a fighter, as an athlete, and as a businessman, held up his end of the bargain. And it ain't good for business if the athlete is engaging in habits that threaten his athleticism. Thus, you never saw Floyd engaging in these kinds of
self-destructive
situations, these kinds of negligent behaviors that Errol Spence is engaging in, because he's neglecting his own career, his own profession, by doing what he's doing. In essence, he is neglecting his very own craft. He's neglecting it in a way that Floyd Mayweather never did. I mean, you could love Floyd, you could hate Floyd, but one thing we all know is that he was a consummate professional. And all these guys under the PBC banner, they think that they're going to have that kind of success.
Yeah, right.
Just because they're in the company of Al Heyman. Hey, you might be in the company of Al Heyman, but you yourself ain't no Floyd fucking Mayweather. I mean, that's why you don't see Al Heyman reproduce that kind of success, right? He hasn't replicated it yet. Does he have another Floyd Mayweather lying around? Where? Because, you know, these guys seem to think that simply being in the company of Al Heyman, being able to smell his cologne, or whatever it is, that's going to make them the next Floyd. And I think they all find out that, you know what, that's really not what's going to happen. But, you know, that they're happy wallowing in mediocrity, that maybe I can't be Floyd, but I can make a quick buck. I mean, the competitive drive of an athlete and what makes an athlete a superior athlete is wanting to be better than what else and who else is out there. That is what drives that athlete to that next level. That, you know, you don't just want to be good, you want to be great. And when you're great, you don't just want to be great, you want to be remembered. You want to leave something behind. This is the kind of motivation, the kind of discipline that I see these PBC guys don't necessarily have. The way they constantly balloon in weight, are sparsely active throughout what are some of their best years as athletes, because, you know, 25 and 35, they really don't feel the same, and 45, forget about it. But you got these guys, they sit around for months and months and months when they could be fighting, when they could be more active, and they're happy to do it. You know, constantly going on hiatus, taking holidays. And this ain't the kind of profession to where that's not going to cost you. That's going to cost you. So, you know, I maintain my original position.
This ain't good for business.
Far be it from me to tell anybody else how to live their life and how to do their job. That's really not what I'm doing. What I'm doing is looking at what available information is out there and reacting to it. Reacting to it the same way that all of you are reacting to it in your own way. And when I see these things, my reaction to them is, that's not good for business. That's not really in keeping with what an athlete should be doing. That is, if they want to have many years of success, it doesn't work that way. You can't have those kinds of bad habits, because if you look at some of the best athletes, your Andrade Ward, your Floyd Mayweather, these kinds of guys, these guys lived healthy lifestyles. So you're doing the opposite of that, which indicates that you may not have the success that they have, that you're a ticking time bomb. All I can do is react to what I'm looking at. Far be it for me to preach. But I reiterate, when I see these things, those are the sentiments, the emotions, the thought processes that these images evoke. That Errol's on borrowed time if he don't clean it up. It's the most I can say.
To be fair, I read it, but I don't want people to take my word for it.
You read it. I'm not going to start showing it to the screen, but anyway, he's received the offer. PBC said we haven't received the offer because it wasn't to them. He's not promoted by PBC. So we sent it to Charlo. You saw the amount of money.
And he's never responded in any way.
He's responded to previous offers saying, I'll speak to Al, I'll come back to you, but nothing. So what we'll have to do is, after Demetrius' fight this weekend, we'll make another offer.
Demetrius said he's willing to go over there and fight at Showtime if necessary.
We're up for doing that as well. No problem.
And that offer pertains to him fighting even on another network?
Yeah, no problem. No problem at all.
It's well documented that a couple of years ago, about 4 or 5, give or take, that Demetrius Andrade, back when he was the WBO champion at 154 pounds, he pulled out of a fight with one of the Charlo brothers. Not the one that we're talking about here, not to be confused with Jermall.
This was with Jamel.
A couple of years ago, Demetrius pulled out of a fight with Jermell Charlo. The issue then seemed to be that Demetrius and his dad, they didn't like the money. They were set to make about $250,000. Artie Palulo, Demetrius' then co-promoter, he alleged that no, that number's wrong. The amount he was set to make was something to the tune of $500,000. That's what he was set to make. I don't think that either of those numbers are very important here today when you consider that here today, years later, there are multi-millions on the table for Jamal to accept this fight. Except this time, it's Demetrius Andrade's people making the offer to one of the Charlo brothers. Doesn't matter which, Jamel or Jamal, doesn't really matter.
Same shit.
I say this because you got a lot of people out there. They bring up this set of failed negotiations, this fight that never happened, as a means to excuse Jamal for not accepting Eddie Hearn's offers. They like to bring this up that, oh, well, Demetrius turned down this fight way back when. Well, he didn't actually turn down this fight because that fight was involving Jamel, whereas this fight is involving Jamal. Not that it even matters, because at the end of the day, look at the money that's on the table now compared to the money that was on the table before. Okay, we're talking multi-millions now. We're talking M's, whereas before we were talking about a couple $100,000. All things considered, that set of failed negotiations is no excuse for Jamal to ignore what's on the table for him here today.
It's not.
Oddly enough, this isn't even the only offer that he's turned down, because in this video from Seconds Out, Radio Raheem, where he's talking to Eddie Hearn not only details that this isn't the only offer that Jamal has been sent from Eddie Hearn, from him. He details that this isn't even the only offer, but there has been back and forth correspondence, except this time, he didn't even get back to him. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse. I feel like I'm stating the obvious, but then I realize that what might be obvious to me may not be obvious to someone else, and what is obvious is that Jamal Charlo wants no parts of Demetrius Andrade. He does not want that fight no matter how much you offer him. That's what's obvious, okay? I mean, how do you tell Nestor Gibbs of the Boxing Voice that Demetrius Andrade is a nobody? Turn around, you're fighting guys like Dennis Hogan and Brandon Adams. I mean, if Demetrius Andrade is a nobody, an undefeated two-division reigning champion, if he's a nobody, then what the fuck are those guys? But you were willing to fight them, and I'd wager that you didn't make the money fighting them that is on the table here for you now if you fight Demetrius. But you'd rather fight them. You'd rather deal with those guys.
I wonder why.
What kind of fucking prize fighter is this? One of the more popular deflections amongst Jamal Charlo's fans, the PBC faction of the boxing community, their spin doctors, is to bring up the name of Gennady Golovkin, because, as we all know, Gennady Golovkin is now being co-promoted by Eddie Hearn. And how Eddie can't seem to get Andrade that Golovkin fight any more than Charlo can get that Golovkin fight, because Charlo supposedly wants that fight. And Demetrius is on the same side of the street as Gennady, fights on the same platform, they even have the same promoter, yet Eddie can't get Demetrius that fight, so they need to focus on that when, you know that Golovkin doesn't want to fight Demetrius. Gennady doesn't want to fight Demetrius any more than Jamal wants to fight Demetrius. That's the truth of it. I mean, if you want my take, if you want my anecdotes on that, Gennady's not interested in Demetrius, but perhaps it's because Gennady doesn't need Demetrius to make $6-7 million. He doesn't need that guy to get that kind of a payday.
He doesn't.
And I'm not excusing Gennady, not showing more enthusiasm towards fighting Demetrius. I'm not making excuses for that guy. I'm just telling you what it is. That, yeah, Gennady doesn't want to fight Demetrius either. Gennady doesn't want to fight Demetrius any more than Jamal wants to fight Demetrius.
They both don't.
The difference, however, is that Gennady doesn't need Demetrius to pull in a multi-million-dollar payday, whereas Jamal, he kind of does. I mean, what's your alternative? What do you got? A Chris Eubank Jr. fight? What, you want us to believe you're going to make $6-7 million fighting that guy? Here, stateside? Give me a break. I think yet another angle of this story that's very intriguing, very compelling, is that Tim Smith very recently was on a podcast questioning whether Eddie Hearn sent an offer at all. He would have had you believe that the legitimacy of what Eddie Hearn is saying is questionable, that who'd he send an offer to? Didn't send an offer to us? Well, no, he never said he sent an offer to you. He spoke with Jamal directly, and he's shown the proof of that. So if he did send Jamal an offer, well, you wouldn't have seen it. He sent it to Jamal because, well, according to Jamal, he's his own promoter. Remember? Lions Only Promotions? Whatever the fuck that is. The guy who runs around saying, I'm my own promoter. I'm the boss. Yet you take orders from what's supposed to be your advisor. Make it make sense, man. Make it make sense. Now, if all these aforementioned factors don't make it crystal clear, don't make it painfully obvious to you that Jamal Charlo is ducking Demetrius Andrade, if that doesn't spell that out for you enough, consider this. Eddie Hearn is saying that he's willing to let Demetrius go over to Showtime and have that fight. That if they want it on Showtime, that can be worked out too. But all you hear is radio silence from Jamal Charlo. He didn't come back with a counteroffer to what Eddie Hearn put on the table for him, you understand. That if you don't like the money or you don't want to have to cross platforms, why don't you come back with an offer of your own? Jamal didn't do this, even though he's supposed to be some kind of promoter. He's supposed to be, that's what he says he is, but he never came back with a counteroffer. If you were willing to have that fight, and that was something that you wanted, that's the kind of situation you want to be involved in, you would have come back with a counteroffer, like, okay, well, you're offering me $7 million to have that fight on your platform. Well, how's about I offer Demetrius $8 million to have it on mine? You know, that's how that would work out. You know, that's how you go about it if you're trying to negotiate a fight. Whereas Jamal Charlo is not trying to negotiate this fight because he doesn't want it. And the people at the PBC, Tim Smith, they don't want it for him. They've spent enough time, enough effort, enough energy trying to convince people that Jamal Charlo is still undefeated, that he actually won the Matt Korobov fight. But hey, look, I know what I saw. Jamal Charlo is just another passenger on the PBC slave ship, being told fairy tales and stories about how he's his own boss and he's his own promoter. Yet, what kind of promoter can't make a counter offer to a fight that's on the table for him? What's the most lucrative fight on the table for him? Jamal Charlo don't bring in that kind of money. He don't get those kinds of paydays. What kind of promoter, what kind of prize fighter is going to walk away from an opportunity like that? What kind? I'll tell you what kind. The kind that doesn't want it. He don't want no problems with Demetrius Andrade. You don't look like shit against Korobov, underwhelm with Brandon Adams, and bring up a 154-pounder so you can finally get a knockout. You don't do all this to turn around and fight an Andrade. So for those of you out there that are not already aware, allow me to be Captain Obvious. Jamal Charlo is ducking Demetrius Andrade.